Greetings. In 1941, awards were a true rarity, like diamonds amidst the ashes of war. Only 127 soldiers and commanders of the Red Army, who had demonstrated exceptional courage and heroism, were awarded the high title of Hero of the Soviet Union. In the following year, 1942, the Kremlin leadership, recognizing the importance of army morale, showed greater generosity. 393 individuals received the deserved Gold Star, 125 of them for the defense of legendary Stalingrad, the city that became a symbol of the unbending will of the Soviet people. In 1943, for the no less large-scale and strategically important Battle of Kursk, which definitively turned the tide of the Great Patriotic War, 239 servicemen of the Red Army were awarded the high title of Hero of the USSR. And suddenly, like an unexpected downpour after a long drought, in the same year of 1943, a veritable flood of awards poured down upon Soviet soldiers and commanders. For example, 2,438 people received the title of Hero of the USSR during the fierce battle for the DNEPR, which is 2.5 times more than the number awarded during the two previous war years combined. Such a sharp jump in the number of awards raises questions and makes one think about the criteria for evaluating feats of valor. Personally, I consider this state of affairs not entirely fair and balanced. The quality of combat in general did not undergo radical changes, and the number of heroic deeds performed by soldiers and officers did not increase so dramatically as to justify such a significant increase in the number of awards. Take, for example, the Battle of Kursk, where 100 German tanks could attack simultaneously, representing a steel avalanche sweeping away everything in its path. However, the reasons for such unprecedented generosity of the Stavka, displayed during the battles for the Dnieper, are quite understandable to me. It was necessary to force the Dnieper swiftly, on the move, giving the enemy no respite, and not allowing the Germans to transfer reserves and reinforcements, primarily heavy artillery, which could inflict serious damage on the advancing Soviet troops. The situation at the front was so tense that sometimes there was a shortage of even elementary watercraft, boats and rafts. Therefore, the Red Army soldiers, demonstrating ingenuity and resourcefulness, dismantled roofs of houses, removed doors, and using improvised materials, constructed makeshift floating devices from them to overcome 1.52 kilometers of icy, dangerous water under continuous enemy fire. Often, gold stars during that period were awarded for actions that previously, in more peaceful times, were marked with less significant awards, for example, the Order of the Red Star. Although, undoubtedly, the forcing of the Dnieper was accompanied by truly outstanding, heroic achievements worthy of the highest award. One of the most striking and memorable belongs to the artillery gunner Afanasy Svinar, who demonstrated incredible accuracy and composure. He destroyed 10 German tanks during the battle, including 6 formidable Tigers and Panthers, which were considered among the most dangerous opponents on the battlefield. Moreover, Afanasy Svinar rightfully belongs among the ace artillerymen, the most effective and skilled masters of their craft throughout the entire Great Patriotic War. Afanasy Ignatievich Svinar is one of the key heroes of the battle for the Dnieper, a man whose name deserves special attention and respect. Afanasy, born in 1916, grew up in the village of Ivanov in the Vinnytsia region. After graduating from school, he worked on the railroad, acquiring skills that, as it turned out, were useful to him at the front. In the autumn of 1939, he was drafted into the Red Army and assigned to the artillery, where he began his journey from soldier to a true master of his craft. 2 years of service flew by quickly, but Afanasy was prevented from returning to civilian life by the outbreak of the war. By the autumn of 1943, he had managed to fight on various fronts, experiencing all the hardships and deprivations of frontline life. And although Afanasy was accompanied by luck, he was never seriously wounded. He still had no significant awards, despite having knocked out more than one enemy tank, contributing to the overall victory. Perhaps the soldier was simply unlucky with commanders who did not always fairly assess the merits of their subordinates. Whatever you do, whatever results you achieve, it's never enough for them. It happens, alas. But at the end of September 1943, his 5th Artillery Regiment reached the Dnieper, and the regimental commander, wanting to boost the morale of his soldiers, personally promised everyone who proved themselves during the river crossing a high award, the Gold Star of the Hero of the Soviet Union. And the young man, assessing the situation and realizing its seriousness, decided, now or never. This is my chance to prove myself, to demonstrate my loyalty to the motherland, and to earn the recognition of my comrades and commanders. On the night of October 1st, Afanassy's crew, where he was the gunner, was the first in the division to cross to the western bank of the Dnieper, near the historic village of Perevolokna, which in those days became the arena of fierce battles. The river crossing took place under heavy enemy fire, and half of the rafts on which the artillerymen were crossing were smashed to pieces by German artillery. Attacks by German infantry, striving to throw the Soviet troops back into the Dnieper, followed one after another, giving the soldiers no respite. Mortars fired on the advancing Red Army soldiers, trying to sow panic and disrupt their battle formations, but their efforts proved futile. The enemy's onslaught was repelled. Soon a battalion of Red Army soldiers crossed to the captured bridgehead, which was able to advance and expand the zone of control, thanks in part to the accurate and composed shots of Afanassy, who, despite the danger, continued to fulfill his duty. He continuously participated in the battles, setting an example of courage and resilience for his comrades. In the following days, the expansion of the bridgehead continued, despite the fierce resistance of the enemy. The situation at the front, Resko-Oslozhnilus, deteriorated sharply on October 12th, when the Nazis, striving to regain their lost positions, transferred additional tank units from Europe to the Dnieper, strengthening their defenses. On this day, Svinar, demonstrating high skill and ability, destroyed 2 Panthers and 1 T-4, making a significant contribution to the defense of the bridgehead. On October 14th, the artillerymen held the defense near the village of Anovka, preparing for a new enemy offensive. As soon as dawn broke, hordes of German Junkers and Heinkel bombers attacked the positions of the Soviet troops, turning the earth into a hellish cauldron. The ground shook from the explosions, and acrid smoke and fumes enveloped the entire area. The monstrous roar deafened the soldiers' ears. No sooner had the smoke cleared than a powerful, ominous rumble of approaching tanks was heard. 2 regiments of motorized infantry, supported by armored vehicles, were attacking, and ahead, lined up in a wedge like a steel ram, moved 120 formidable German tanks. Afanassy had never been in such a predicament, in such hell. But despite the danger of the situation, he acted calmly and coolly, as experienced instructors had taught him. Let the lead tank get closer, aimed precisely, and fired a sniper shot at its track. The Tiger, immobilized, began to spin helplessly in place. The second shell hit its side, and the TVI, engulfed in flames, began to smoke. Having knocked out the 2 lead Tigers, which were leading the other vehicles, the gunner switched to the infantry, which, taking advantage of the smoke screen, had come too close to the artillerymen's positions. The other guns also fired accurately, inflicting tangible losses on the enemy. Soon the battlefield was again enveloped in smoke, but this time from burning German tanks. This was no longer 1941 for the Germans. They encountered the stubborn resistance of battle-hardened Soviet soldiers. After several hours of continuous fighting, Afanassy was left alone in the crew. All the other artillerymen were wounded or killed. He had to bring the heavy shells himself, load the gun, and fire, performing the work of the entire crew. He managed to destroy the 5th steel monster, and then the 6th, continuing to fight despite fatigue and losses. Then, from behind the thick smoke concealing the battlefield, a German T-4 suddenly emerged from the flank and crushed the gun. But the gunner managed to dive into the trench at the last moment, saving his life. The tank began to spin over the trench, burying Afanasy with earth. He had already mentally said goodbye to life, but the T-4, not noticing him, drove on, and Svinar, miraculously surviving, managed to dig himself out. After that, armed with a submachine gun and grenades lying in the trench, he engaged the German infantry. When the next tank approached the trench, the soldier, waiting for the right moment, let it pass, and then accurately threw an anti-tank grenade into the engine compartment. The tank flared up like a torch, after which the artilleryman, taking advantage of the ensuing confusion, began to make his way back to his own lines. In that incredibly difficult battle, Svinar destroyed 7 tanks, 4 heavy and 3 medium. And in total, on the bridgehead, during 2 weeks of continuous fighting, he had 10 tanks, 6 trucks with ammunition, and dozens of guns and mortars to his credit. For his outstanding exploits, courage, and heroism, Afanasy Ignatievich was awarded the title of Hero of the USSR. In total, during the Great Patriotic War, the gunner destroyed 16 tanks, inscribing his name in history as one of the most effective artillerymen of the Red Army. He rightfully ranks among the 20 most effective and skilled artillerymen of the Red Army, becoming a true legend and an example to follow.